When Pac Man made the jump to 3D, the series became a 3D platformer. Sometimes it is really hard to translate an arcade game into 3D without doing something really different for it, so they changed the genre completely, while keeping many major elements that still made it recognizable as a Pac Man game. But that wasn't going to stop Namco from bringing Pac Man into 3D again, but this time in a very different way. In the late 90s, there was great desire within Namco to bring Miss Pac Man back into a starring role. It'd be 19 years since she made her debut in arcades in '82, and it was finally time to bring her back. Pac Man just spun off into the Pac Man World series, so why not do something a little different for the Miss? It was an opportunity to reinvent Pac Man for 3D. The resulting game was Miss Pac Man Maze Madness for the PlayStation. Unlike Pac Man World, it played a little bit closer to the original arcade games, confining you to a grid, navigating a series of mazes, and collecting some dots while dodging ghosts. But like Pac Man World, it still was a full-on adventure game as well. I believe development started on it shortly after Pac Man Worlds ended. It was created by a separate team within Namco, but I do at least know Pac Man World's lead programmer reprised his role for this game. I know that because I actually paid attention when watching the credits. Yeah, research. While I never played Pac Man World as a kid, I did actually grow up playing this game. But of course, being a kid with only Nintendo consoles, I had the N64 version, but the game was also ported to Dreamcast. As far as I know, there's no major differences between versions, except the N64 version has simplified slideshow versions of the cartoon FMVs without the voice acting, and I think 2 of the bonus levels were removed. But other than that, they're pretty much the same, except the Dreamcast version looks a little prettier and runs at 60 FPS, so that's going to be the version that I play. So, without further ado, why don't we... Miss Pac Man has added a pink ribbon to her wardrobe by partnering with the National Alliance of Breast Cancer Organizations. Oh, because it abbreviates to NABCO, which sounds just like Namco, right? I forgot all about this. During the game's development and marketing, they partnered with the Breast Cancer Foundation to help spread awareness and stuff, because at the time, Miss Pac Man was the most iconic and recognizable female video game character. At least one of them. So, that's cool. A little bit of neat video game history for you, I guess, right there. But, enough chit chat, why don't we pop this fricker in and get our pack on. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. I play all of my Dreamcast games with a VGA cable because that is by far the best image you're going to get out of the thing, but there are some Dreamcast games that are not compatible with VGA, even though there's absolutely no reason to justify that. There are a couple of workarounds for this, like using boot discs, but sometimes all it takes is some Indiana Jones malarkey. Most people probably have the VGA switch box, but for those like myself who have the dedicated cable, you can boot up the Dreamcast with no AV cable plugged in, listen for the disc to start up, and plug it in right as the game boots. I'm not even joking, like this actually works. It's because there's a flag check for which AV cable you're using before the game starts, so if you plug it in after the flag check but before the game actually boots, you'll be playing Miss Pac Man and all of its forbidden VGA goodness. I can't promise that this will work for every Dreamcast game, but it does work for Miss Pac Man, and now that it is working, let's do it. Alright, we've got the title screen, and I've got to be honest guys, Miss Pac Man don't look too great here. Her body's a tad dark, and you can really tell the eyebrows are on a separate model because of the difference in tone there. Not to worry though, because her model looks much better when you're actually playing the game. I also think the title screen music sounds a little bit morbid, like, I don't know dude, this just doesn't speak to me as a Pac Man adventure theme. It just sounds really foreboding and eerie, like even when I was a kid I thought that. Alright, so the story starts up with a little cartoon cutscene following Miss Pac Man as she enters Professor Pac's lab. He explains that he invented the Pactrometer, a device that allows you to visit the 4 uncharted wondrous worlds of Pacland, each one hiding a crystal of great power. It turns out that an evil entity plots to steal these 4 crystals and use them to take over Pacland. This evil witch called Mesmeralda took over the castle of the 4th Wondrous Land, transforming it into a sinister haunted fortress, and ever since, nobody has seen the princess of that land. While showing off the Pactrometer to Miss Pac Man, a portal then opens up in the lab's mirror and sucks Professor Pac in. He tosses the Pactrometer to Miss Pac Man, declaring that she must use it to travel to the 4 uncharted worlds of Pacland, secure the crystals, and save Pacland.
Go! Go, get
We first land in Cleopatra, an Egyptian-themed level, and oh my god, dude, the music! That is bumpin'! Real talk though, this game's soundtrack is really good. The game actually does play fairly similarly to the arcade classic Pac Man titles, confining you to grid-based movement as you navigate a series of corridors. Every level contains a series of segmented mazes that have you collecting a certain amount of dots before it allows you to move on. Now, I didn't really like it that much when Pac Man World had mazes like this. I felt they were very lazily thrown together and incorporated stage hazards that really did not work for gameplay that involves escaping a constant pursuit, but the mazes in this game, oh, they were handled much better. Pathways split much more frequently. The mazes tend to avoid having many longer hallways, so navigating around the ghosts is actually quite doable this time, and this is a very good thing to have in this game because you're going to be performing other tasks within the maze. Transitioning these maze segments are a series of light puzzles, often involving pushing blocks, throwing switches, and bouncing off of spring tiles. When navigating a maze, you'll be pursued by ghosts. You'll be able to knock them out after grabbing a power pellet, but unlike Pac Man World, the power pellet also allows you to take out other enemies as well. Just like Pac Man World, there's plenty of enemies themed after every level. Mummies and Anubis dudes for the Egyptian world, cavemen and saber-toothed tigers for the Crystal Caves world, dragons for the Chinese themed world, and all sorts of Halloween themed enemies for the final world. Miss Pac-Man has no means of attack, so the power pellet is your only way of taking out these enemies. In fact, Miss Pac-Man doesn't have any moves at all. You don't even need any of the dang buttons on the controller to play this game, just the D-pad. All there is to it is moving. That's it. No butt stomps, no charge rolls, no dot tossing. Just 2 feet and a heartbeat. Though of course, this game having elements of puzzle solving, there are actions you can perform. The first major one is pushing blocks. These have a fairly large role in the game. You might need to fill a hole or bridge a gap so you can advance. There's a handful of different types of blocks too. Aside from the standard black blocks, we've also got TNT boxes. These will start a countdown after you push them, and once it reaches 0, boom. These are used for destroying stone walls that block your way, but later in the game you're gonna have to use them in place of standard blocks, having them substitute for a platform, but since that thing's gonna explode, you better hurry your ass up. It's a pretty cool way of adding some urgency to some of these puzzles. It cranks up the challenge for sure. The other type of block are ice blocks. Once you push them, they'll continue sliding until they collide with a wall or another object. They can also be used for cooling lava so you can walk on it, but like using the TNT blocks as platforms, that only lasts a short while, so you better make haste. With every set of boxes comes a reset coin. These appear on the sidelines whenever you push a box, and grabbing it will have them all reset to their prior positions. So if you mess up or get a box in a position that renders it irretrievable, you can snatch one of these to start all over. There's also going to be a handful of other mechanisms you can interact with as well, like these switches that'll open and close doorways, buttons that have you plotting the right path to push in the correct order, and boosters that'll launch Miss Pac-Man like a bowling ball, sometimes to knock over objects, but usually just to transition the stage. There's a pretty good variety to the actions you can perform in this game to solve these simple puzzles, and that's a pretty impressive thing when you're staying so true to the original arcade gameplay that you control the entire game with nothing but the D-pad. In Pac-Ping Harbor, there's going to be a lot of puzzles that involve explosives. In addition to the TNT crates, we've also got ghosts that'll carry powder kegs, leaking gunpowder as they walk around. If you can get them to make the trail in the right spot, you can then get this dragon to light it up and blow up any neighboring crates. There's also the occasional firework launcher that you can use to blow through stone blocks and even destroy some enemies time to time. When you're not solving puzzles, you're going to be exploring the level, searching for as many dots as you can, and for the 7 fruits hidden in every stage. Like Pac Man World, the fruits stay true to the ones that appeared in the Miss Pac-Man arcade game, which was an obvious choice, but a nice touch of consistency nonetheless. So the purpose of collecting these things regards to stars. Yeah, just like Mario 64, certain levels will require a certain amount before it'll let you play it. There's 4 ways to get a star. 1, by finishing a level, 2, by collecting every dot in the level, and 3, by collecting every fruit in the level. And there's 1 extra one for beating the level's time trial mode as well. You'll unlock the time trials by completing the corresponding stages. It'll task you with plowing through it again within an allotted time, collecting clocks to extend the timer as you go. Bumping into an enemy or a hazard will cost you your time, so you pretty much gotta make it in one perfect go. These are actually pretty difficult difficult. I found myself attempting each one quite a number of times before I was able to get it right. I imagine this will put off some people, you know, replaying the same thing over and over again until you get it perfect. It's not going to be everyone's forte, but thankfully, you don't actually have to do these. Though there are going to be times when you will be hard-pressed for stars, so you're either going to have to be a completionist in every level or complete these time trials. The choice is yours, but I do recommend a good blend of both, if you don't mind the time trials, that is. I do admit it is a tad irritating to have to go back and replay entire levels to get these stars if you weren't thorough with them the first time. This is especially annoying during the last part of the game, but I'll get to that in a bit. You can also get some extra stars by doing any of the 3 bonus stages. The first one is this weird dog sled race where you can spin around to launch your opponents off the track. You'll get a star for getting to the end of the race. You don't even need to come in first place, so I don't even know why this is a race when you don't need that, but there's also a star for getting all of the dots and one more for getting all of the fruit. However, it's almost impossible to get all of the dots without going mind-numbingly slow most of the time, so you're definitely not going to be getting all of the fruit and all of the dots in the same run. I'm not a big fan of this dog sled race. It controls kinda clunkily. It's not like difficult, but it's just not fun. Luckily, it's not in the N64 version, so if you're playing that one, you can skip right on by it. Next up, we've got a boat minigame where you'll launch missiles at oncoming ships. It's Yep, that's all there is to it. It's good fun though. Simple, but it's fun. The last one has you sprinting across a bunch of conveyor belts, dodging explosive boxes and electrical shocks along the way to get a fruit at the end. You'll have to clear 7 screens in a row without dying. This one was really hard, but it was also really fun. Took me damn near 10 minutes, but I was having a blast doing it. Okay, so once you clear the 4th world, you get this pretty cool chase scene where you run from this giant green Pac monster thing, reacting as quickly as you can to take the optimal pathways. I think the thing's name is Goblin, you know, like a goblin that gobbles things up. I don't know, that's what the name of the level is. Wait a minute. Okay, I just had a big realization. This is kind of off topic, but there it is. When I was a kid, I grew up with this 31-in-1 pirated NES collection cartridge that was made by local pirates on the Canadian East Coast. I think what they did is they got a bunch of Famicom games, translated them all themselves, and reusing the Famicom cartridges, dumped 31 of them onto a single cart, and then made these converter cartridges so you can play them on American NESs. And Pac Man was on this cartridge, but when you boot up Pac Man, the title screen says Goblin. Yeah, like I'm not even joking, there it is right there. Goblin. I've wondered for forever why they called Pac Man Goblin, but if they translated these ROMs themselves, and the Japanese phrase paku paku, which can be translated as to eat or to gobble, is where they got the name Pac Man from, then that could have been mistranslated as Goblin. Wow, I've wondered this my entire life, and there's the answer right there. Dang. Anyway, back to Miss Pac-Man. After escaping Goblin, we then get the first fight with Mesmeralda. Dodge the projectiles and use the cannons to fire at her. It's not a half-bad boss fight, and it kind of makes me surprised that they didn't bother having any boss fights anywhere else in the game. I mean, clearly they do work in a game like this, because I'm doing one right now and it works, so I think the game could have used maybe a couple more of them, you know, maybe one at the end of every world or something. Once you beat her, you get a cutscene showing Mesmeralda's escape, but not before Miss Pac-Man gets a hold of her witch key. You can now use this key to revisit older stages and take new paths that were previously blocked, and while this does sound cool on paper, these detours only ever lead to brief areas that hold one of the 7 fruits, so basically there's a lot of levels you just can't get the fruit star in, and in some cases the dot star, until you beat Mesmeralda, get the key, and then go back and do it all over. The idea here is to replay stages at this point in the story because the 4 preceding levels each require a lot of stars to access, and since you were intentionally locked out of getting a bunch of these in previous levels, you are going to have to retread old territory just to progress. I think it would have been fine and perfectly fair to need this many stars if the witch key was not a thing in this game, because if you were thorough on the first run of any given stage, you totally could have avoided this, but the game is designed so even the most prepared of players cannot do that. You're completely locked out until this point, and then you gotta go back and start doing some stuff over. The next 4 levels you need these stars stars for are at least pretty dang good though. Each one recycles one of the 4 previous themes, but it also incorporates all of the previously explored stage gimmicks and puzzle mechanisms and elaborates on them to make some very challenging puzzle action hybrid levels. After completing the 4 final levels, we run from the big green thing again. We do another very similar boss fight to the first Mesmeralda fight, and then we save Pac-Land from Mesmeralda, rescue the princess, and get the credits. That was actually pretty dang good. I really enjoyed that quite a bit. It's a lot less ambitious than Pac Man World for sure, but it was really cool to see them take such a simple formula and really get the most out of it. There's a couple of dumb things that I don't really like that much, like I don't like how the witch's key locks you out of 100%ing earlier stages and forces you to go back and replay them just to progress, and that being a mandatory thing, I really wasn't a fan of that. But other than that, I think this holds up pretty well as a simple Pac-Man styled adventure game. I think a big part of what makes the game so much fun to explore is how thoroughly detailed it is. The worlds are so densely packed with unique structures, the Egyptian levels especially. Look at all of the Pacified Egyptian statues and hieroglyphics and stuff. This game has a killer presentation. The soundtrack, like I mentioned before, it is super freaking good. And I know they did this also in Pac-Man World, but again, we've got ghosts wearing costumes to match the level, and that's always pretty great. And I guess we've got some extra content too, yeah, so similar to how Pac-Man World included the original Pac-Man, Maze Madness does the same thing with the original arcade Miss Pac-Man. And yeah, it sure is Miss Pac-Man. Not really much more I can say about that. We've also got a multiplayer mode. I guess we may as well check that out, see what that even is. There's 3 game modes you can select from. We've got Dot Mania, Ghost Tag, and Da Bomb. Dot Mania is simple enough. The first to collect 80 dots wins. There's also a handful of power-ups you can use to knock out the competition, like a cake to make you big enough to stomp on people, a chili pepper to spread fire around, and a lightning bolt to shock the other players. It's kind of just like really incomprehensive. Like, it's just really hard to tell what's going on most of the time, and it's not really that fun. Ghost Tag's a little better. Everyone starts as a ghost, and the first to collect the pack symbol becomes their selected character, and then they can start collecting dots. But if someone else grabs you, then they become the pack character and they can collect dots. It's essentially a King of the Hill style game, with the first to collect 50 dots in their pack form being the winner. The concept's better than the execution. It's not terrible, but it's nothing I'd spend more than like 5 minutes playing. The last one on the list is Da Bomb. It's just hot potato, you know. The player with the bomb goes a little bit faster and they can pass it off to other players. If you have the bomb when the timer hits 0, you lose and the last player standing wins. Yeah, none of these are particularly good. It just feels like an afterthought that they threw into the package at the last minute. You can play as Puka though, and buddy, I love me some Puka, so there's that, I guess. But yeah, that is Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness, a simple yet solid adventure game. If you're a big fan of those grid-based adventure games, like it reminds me a lot of the PS2 Frogger games, even like Zapper, Wicked Cricket. If you're a big fan of games like that, yeah, I would check this out actually. It's not expensive on eBay, especially the PS1 version, and I think it does hold up quite a bit better than Pac-Man World, but you know, simpler games tend to do that. Pac-Man World might have been more impressive back then than this game, but now that it's not that back then, this is going to be the one that holds up, you know, a little better than the one that's kind of experimenting and trying to figure things out. But that's precisely why I'm very excited to check out Pac-Man World 2. I'm really pumped to see how this expands upon and fleshes out and polishes everything that Pac-Man World 1 introduced. So I'll see you guys next time when we take a look at Pac-Man World 2. See you guys then.